Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Wrestling Rant. Last time on the show, I went over all of the joke characters and hinted at another topic, which is what I'm going to be doing right now, and that is the Hosses. First question that some of you might be asking, well, what's a Hoss? Well, to my understanding, a Hoss is a term used in the business that describes somebody with no real talent, no charisma, and they're just a big guy. So it's a big guy with no talent, no charisma, no mic skills, no ring skills. And that's the kind of guys we're going to be talking about this time around. Since there are actually less in TNA, I believe we will start there. The first one that comes to mind is a guy who's been in TNA for a while now, actually. And that is Hernandez. This guy's been with TNA. He's been a part of two or three groups that were basically the same, essentially. The first one was the Latin American Exchange, or LAX. It was him and Homicide, and they were joined by basically their manager, who was Conan. And Conan had his own problems with the company, and that's why he ended up in his own lawsuit with them. But we won't worry about that now. After Homicide went bye-bye, Hernandez wound up by himself for a while. They had him in a god-awful feud with Matt Morgan. And Matt Morgan, you might say, would be a Hoss himself. But I actually don't think so, because Morgan's another one of those guys who was basically a WWE dropout. And but the thing of it is, he's actually not a bad wrestler. And he has a bit of charisma. He can talk. He can cut promos. So honestly, he's not that bad. And for a bigger guy, he actually has some agility. He can do some good stuff. So honestly, I wouldn't really consider him a Hoss. And I actually kind of like him. But Hernandez is a Hoss. He's got, like, no talent. The guy is dangerous in the ring. He has dropped people. His finishing move it's what he calls the border toss. And essentially what it is, it's Scott Hall's Razor's Edge or Outsider's Edge, whatever you want to call it. Only instead of going down with it like Scott Hall did, he just kind of gets them up in the crucifix sort of position and then just kind of throws them. And half the time they land on the back of their head and neck. And he dropped Doug Williams like this before, and it looked really bad, and everybody was scared that he was going to be hurt. Fortunately, he wasn't, at least not seriously hurt. He's dropped Kazarian here recently. The guy's unsafe. He's got no talent, no charisma. He can't cut promos for shit. And despite them sending his ass to Mexico for several months to learn to speak Spanish because they wanted him to be like Rey Mysterio, where he could speak English and Spanish. Didn't really work. He's never been all that good at cutting promos. So I just don't understand why they've kept him. After he was in LAX, and after he was partners with Matt Morgan, and after he came back from Mexico, he came back and was by himself for a while, and then now they have him paired up with Chavo Guerrero. And this is just a terrible... this is just terrible because, while I don't even really like Chavo all that much, I think he still deserves a little bit better than this. The only funny thing is they're actually the current tag team champions right now in TNA. But you have Hernandez. Completely worthless. Don't even know why they keep him. Oh yeah, and I actually did research for this episode because I felt last episode with the joke characters I was a little unprepared. I couldn't really remember some people, so I actually went and I did some research. I looked over both rosters on the official WWE website as well as ImpactWrestling.com. It's not TNA Wrestling anymore because I forgot to mention this. TNA, they're not really called TNA Wrestling anymore. It's Impact Wrestling. They don't want to be called TNA anymore. But the funny thing is, they still use the TNA logo, and there are some people who still refer to it as TNA. So, changing the name to Impact Wrestling really doesn't matter now, does it? But anyways, after looking over TNA's roster, and I've looked over this roster a few times in the past couple of weeks, it's actually fairly out of date. There's a bunch of people missing, like a lot of the people in the Aces and Eights, which, now that I think about it, there's 2 or 3 Hosses just in the Aces and Eights, so I'm probably missing a couple of people. But of the roster that was actually posted, I was able to get Hernandez, and the next guy on the list. I don't even know if you can really consider this guy a Hoss, because I don't even think he qualifies as a wrestler at all. This is Jesse Godders. This guy is a total nobody, and the reason he is that is because he was on one of the seasons of Big Brother. They made a big deal about it when he first came in. He's Tara's little boy toy, and it's really kind of sickening because this dude looks like he's in his maybe mid to late 20s, and Tara is like 40 something. So again, you have another storyline where somebody who's pretty old is fucking somebody who's kind of young. And it just brings back all these weird pictures of like Anna Nicole Smith and that old guy that she was banging for the longest time. Really, really unpleasant imagery in my head. But yeah, Jesse Godders was on one of the seasons of Big Brother 10, I think it was. They tried to make a big deal of it. They tried to say he's a big star. He's not. I don't even think Big Brother airs in the United States anymore. It did maybe a decade ago for the first couple of seasons, but now I think that's like a UK only thing. Because we don't really give a shit about it here in the States. Or maybe that's just in my neck of the woods. I'm not really sure. But who gives a shit about Big Brother? When this guy first debuted, little side note, he first debuted, this is on one of the Botchamania videos, by the way, if you want to look it up. I don't know which one, so don't ask. But when he comes down, Tara wins the Knockouts title. Again, she won it off of Miss Tessmacher. So she wins it, and as she's celebrating, she grabs a mic and she says, "I want to take this opportunity to introduce my boo, Jesse." And he comes down. Taz tries to make a big deal out of it. They can't because he's a nobody. And during this little part here, the crowd starts chanting, "Who are you? Who are you?" The guy's a nobody. He's a freaking nobody. They've actually tried to put him in matches, despite the fact that I don't think he's actually trained to wrestle. So, I really don't see why they're doing this. Anyways, he sucks, end of story. The only other person I was able to find from TNA is Rob Terry. Now, Rob Terry started out as the big muscle guy behind the 2 members of the British Invasion, who was Doug Williams and Brutus Magnus. I probably should have put Magnus on this list too, because he's really not that good either. But anyways, Rob Terry's this big muscle head. Once the British Invasion angle ended, he went off by himself. And he was in a very strange storyline feud against Orlando Jordan. And I really don't even want to say anything more about it than that, because it was really damn weird. Everything about Orlando Jordan while he was in TNA just makes me want to puke. Okay? When he was in the WWE, he was terrible. Then he somehow wound up in TNA, and they made it even worse. Again, I don't really want to go into it, because I can feel I'm about to throw up already. Back to Rob Terry before I puke. So he's this big musclehead guy. He's not all that good at wrestling. I don't even know if he was really trained, but I guess he must have been. But anyways, after his feud with Orlando Jordan ended, he winds up getting stuck with Robbie E, and they renamed him to Robbie T, and so he became Robbie E's muscle bodyguard, essentially. Again, a lot of just strange stuff. Here recently, I haven't actually seen this because, again, I haven't watched TNA in so long, but I've heard about it. Here recently, Robbie T actually decided to, I guess, turn face by turning on Robbie E. He says, I ain't gonna take this shit no more. Because Robbie E basically treated him like crap. But anyways. So he decides to turn on Robbie E. And so those two aren't friends anymore. Blah, blah, blah. So that came and went. I really don't see him being all that great in the ring. He's not really. Again, seems kind of dangerous and kind of green, so might as well just get rid of him. I mean, unless you want to reform the British Invasion, I don't really see any point. Because Doug Williams and Brutus Magnus, those two guys aren't really all that great by themselves. So, again, this is another case of you might as well stick them as a tag team, because they probably don't have much of a future as anything else. So that actually concludes, for right now at least, like I said, the TNA roster page has not been updated in so long. I guess their webmaster can't be bothered to add the guys from the Aces and Eights. Like they have, I believe it's Mike Knox, who used to be in the WWE. He's in the Aces and Eights now. And I believe they changed his name to Knux. Knux. So they took his last name from the WWE. They replaced the O with a U. And that's it. I think it's Mike Knox. I could be wrong. And they also have the guy who used to be Luke Gallows, and before that he was Festus. Again, he's a hoss too. Not really all that good in the ring. Not really all that good on the mic. I mean, I guess he fits right in as like a biker dude, because he does kind of look like a biker. Bald head, goatee. You know, they put him in a leather vest. Yeah. But whatever. Still not that good of a wrestler, though, and can't really talk for shit, so not really much point in keeping him. But that's about it for the TNA guys. In the WWE, of course, you have the Big Show. And he's been in the company for so long. He's never been all that good. I mean, even back in WCW as the Giant, he wasn't even all that good. He's just a big 400-pound guy. He's a big, about the only thing he can really do is play like a monster heel. They have him try to be a babyface. It doesn't really work. Because, yeah, he's all happy and stuff, and he supposedly likes to entertain people. You know, that's great. But you can't wrestle that well. You're really not that good at wrestling, and he really can't cut promos all that well either. Lacking in the charisma department severely. Not only that, but he's getting up there in age. I think it's about time he retired. And the same, honestly, could be said for the next guy I have here on my list, which is Mark Henry. This is another guy who's never been all that good. Another guy who can pretty much only play a monster heel. And again, not very good in the ring, not very good on the mic. He's got like no charisma. I don't know why they ever brought this guy in the first place. I guess they thought they needed some big dude to be muscle for the Nation of Domination way back in the day. But I mean, hell, they had Ahmed Johnson for that. But then again, he got kicked out because he was too weak. Which he was, not much better than Mark Henry, but whatever. We'll move right along to the next guy on the list, and that is the Great Khali. I already talked about him in the Joke Characters video. So I've pretty much said everything that needs to be said about him. Again, to reiterate, and I don't want to waste anybody's time with this, but just to reiterate, he's not a very good wrestler. He can't talk. He barely speaks English. And he's really just not that good. Don't even know why he's still in the company or why he was ever hired in the first place. If you want to play to the Indian crowd, the Indian demographic, if you want to do that, you have Jinder Mahal, and I know a lot of people probably think he's not all that good. You know what? He's a hell of a lot better of a wrestler than Khali is. At least he can actually work a decent match. He may not be super great on the mic, but he can actually speak English, unlike Khali. And if you want a good Indian wrestler who can talk and who can put on good matches, I don't think Sanjay Dutt is under contract to any big promotion. Give him a buzz. He's a good wrestler, and he can talk. Don't know why they haven't bothered to do that. Oh yeah, because he's too small and Vince hates little guys. Anyways, that covers it for Great Khali. The next guy on the list, Ryback. I've already kind of talked about him before. Again, it's really reiterating the same thing over and over again, because all Hosses are essentially the same. Big muscled up dudes or big fat dudes with no talent and no charisma. And Ryback is just a big muscled up guy. He looks like he's roided up beyond all belief. He can't hardly talk. He's had 2 or 3 promos, and he sucks. He can't hardly talk. This stupid feed me more catchphrase of his, this stupid gimmick, it's really old. And it's just dumb. Not really much to say about this guy. The next 2 on the list I really should have covered under the joke characters. Brodus Clay and Tensai. And no, I still don't know what Tensai's little hip-hop name is. It wasn't on the WWE website, so I'm not even sure if they actually did change his name or not. I'm not sure. But whatever. Tons of funk, tons of lard, whatever you want to call them. These guys suck. Albert, A-Train, Tensai, whatever you want to call him, he always has sucked. And I've already talked about this guy before. He's been carried by every tag team partner he's ever had. He first came into the company in the late 90s. He was supposed to be the tattoo artist and piercing artist for Draws. So they were a tag team for a while. And then Draws suffered his nasty career-ending injury where he got pretty much paralyzed from the neck down. So that tag team was done. A-Train floundered about for a while. And then he wound up as the other half of the team of TNA, which was Test and Albert. So he was teamed up with Test, and their manager was Trish Stratus. And really, the only thing this team served was to expose us to Trish Stratus, who actually wound up being one of the best divas they've ever had. And despite this girl not being all that well trained when she first started, she actually worked her ass off to become a pretty damn decent in-ring competitor. And that's one of the reasons why she's in the Hall of Fame now. She's very well respected. Most of the current divas cite her as inspiration in one form or another. Yeah. But really, the Test and Albert team was really only to expose... The only purpose it served was to expose us to Trish. And, I mean, that's nice, I guess. Trish always was hot. I mean... And then she finally became a pretty good in-ring competitor, which was cool. But yeah, so that team lasted for a while. I think they held the tag titles. Maybe. I don't even remember if they did or not. But that team evaporated after a while. And Albert floundered around again for some time. Until he was finally picked up in the three-man faction, the X Factor, with X-Pac and Just Incredible. Now, I've never really liked X-Pac, but at least the guy can wrestle. Just Incredible was alright, I guess. But, this faction was just really pointless. Didn't really go anywhere. I don't think any of them won any titles while they were part of the group. I don't really remember, though. But again, it's just another example of how Albert has been carried by every freaking partner he's ever had. After that, his career in the WWE didn't last much longer after that faction broke up. After that, his contract ran out and he went to Japan. And while he was in Japan, he teamed up with some other American guy. I think it might have been Matt Morgan. And he was probably carried by Matt Morgan over in Japan. But they won I think it was the IGPW, tag team titles. So there was that. Ah, crap. But anyways. But I'm going on and on about Albert. There's really no need for it. Again, he's not a very good wrestler. He plays a powerhouse, and that's pretty much it. That style is so played out, and we have so many other guys playing that same style. I mean, pretty much everybody on the list that I've listed so far, they all do that style. The big powerhouse. They're strong, they lift people up and they slam the hell out of them. Or they pick them up for a big power bomb. Or they'll come running at them and just run them over. The powerhouse gimmick is so played out. It's so old. People want to see something different. And the same thing goes for Brodus Clay. The only difference with him is he thinks he can dance. And one of the most frightening things I've ever seen in my life is this fat lardo shaking his jiggly ass in the ring with his two little ring rats, the Funkadactyls, and then bringing kids into the ring from the crowd to dance with them. Really, really, really scary. But let's go ahead and move on. The next guy I have on the list is Titus O'Neil. him being one half of the god-awful tag team, the Primetime Players. The only other half of it being Darren O'Neal, who... Those two guys also should have probably been under the joke characters list, because that's really all they are. Anytime they're in a match on Raw or SmackDown, they get their asses kicked. Essentially, they're the jobber tag team. These guys job to, like, everybody in the tag team division. They've jobbed to Kane and Daniel Bryan, Team Hell No. They've jobbed to Brodus and Tensai. They've jobbed to Primo and Epico a while ago. But Titus, again, another big goof with 2 left feet, can't hardly talk, and he also does this annoying dog barking thing. And he's been doing it since he's been on NXT. Because him and Darren Young were both on 2 different seasons of NXT. Because they were on... Darren Young was one of the ones that was in the first season with Wade Barrett and Daniel Bryan, and he was also part of the Nexus. And Titus O'Neil, I believe, was in the second season. And they both wound up coming back for the last season of it, the Redemption season, which never really ended, despite the fact that Darren Young and O'Neal were both signed to SmackDown, and O'Neal and Derek Bateman were the only 2 contestants left at that point. So with O'Neal being signed to SmackDown, shouldn't Derek Bateman have won by default? Nope. The season kept going, even though Bateman was the only real contestant left. I don't really understand why they did that, but whatever. But O'Neal's just a big goof. He's got 2 left feet. He's not a real good wrestler. He's not very good on the mic. And that annoying dog barking thing. Just stop. Please, just stop that dog barking thing. You look like an idiot when you do it. And the fact that not only does he do the dog barking, but he puts his hands up on his head like the little dog ears. Goof. Just stop, please. Moving along. The next guy I have here on the list, Ezekiel Jackson, who I don't think we've actually seen in a long time. He's probably still under contract to the company because the WWE is actually a lot better about managing the roster page on their website. As soon as their contract comes to an end or they fire somebody, they're off the roster. So he must still be employed, otherwise he wouldn't be on the roster. But again, can't talk, not a very good wrestler. He plays the powerhouse thing. He's another guy that looks like he's roided up beyond all belief. They gave him a run with the Intercontinental title. That pains me, because the Intercontinental title is one of the most prestigious titles that they have. It has such a honorable legacy. I mean, great people have held this thing, like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock have both held this title. And, fun fact, the Intercontinental title is the only title in the WWE that John Cena has never held. And that's also one of the reasons why I don't think he's a true champion. True champions hold the IC title first, and then they become WWE champion. Cena has never been Intercontinental champion. He's been US champion, but the US title's a joke. That was another holdover from WCW. The US title is such a joke. It's had such joke champions as Zack Ryder and Santino Marella. They're actually trying to bring some prestige back to it by having Antonio Cesaro hold it right now. But he's been jobbed out over the last couple of weeks to more main event guys. And it's really just dumb. Cesaro is a good wrestler. But anyways, I think that's about covers it for Ezekiel Jackson. The last guy I have on the list here for the WWE is Sheamus. And some of you may not agree with me on that. Some of you may think that he actually has some charisma, he has some wrestling skills. I don't really think so. He's another big goof who thinks it's comedy time. You know, I'm going to cut a promo and it's just going to be, I'm going to tell you an old Irish legend. And I will admit, the first couple of times he did these Irish stories, they weren't so bad. And then actually kind of a little bit funny. But he's just another big dude. And his wrestling skills aren't all that great. He's like... They're like grooming him to be the next Cena. He hardly ever sells, taking a beating. And he wins way too often, just like Cena does. I really do think that they're grooming him to become the next Cena, because, according to what I've heard, Cena has a lot of nagging injuries that have been bothering him, and he's probably not going to be around for too awful much longer. Especially if he has another nasty injury. He could end up being done for good. But yeah, I don't really think Sheamus is all that good. His promos, even the goofy Irish legend stuff, isn't really all that great. His ring skills, not all that great. And they have to make this big deal out of him being Irish. Pasty white motherfucker with this bright, flaming red hair. And this sideburns, Lemmy Chops mustache. That looks like it was drawn on his face. Somebody took a handful of Cheetos and just smeared this crap on his face. He may honestly be Irish born. That's great. But, for fuck's sake, man, get a tan. I'm being blinded by your whiteness. And I'm kind of a pasty white guy myself, but I'm not a freaking albino like you are. Okay? Again, this is all just my opinion. I'm sure folks disagree with me. I'm pretty sure that's all of the big hosses, at least in the WWE and TNA. So, as I said in the joke character video, these are also some guys that could be used to be released. Again, they're getting ready for spring cleaning, or at least I think they are. You could get rid of a few of these guys. Hardly anybody would miss them. Nobody's going to miss Brodus Clay or Tensai. Nobody's going to miss Titus O'Neil or Ezekiel Jackson. Ezekiel Jackson, I don't even think he's been on the show in months. Nobody's going to miss him. Big Show's getting close to retirement soon. So's Mark Henry. Great Khali sucks. I don't think anybody miss him. Ryback. They probably really want to keep Ryback because they put a lot of time and money into this guy to hype him up, and all the frickin' jobbers that they fed him. After the Skip Sheffield thing and the Nexus thing ended, he went away for a while because he was injured. He came back as Ryback. And he was in these squash matches with these local jobbers. 2 or 3 of them at a time. And he was beating them. Squashing them. It's pathetic. Local jobber matches like that, the squash matches, they're just pathetic. If you have to resort to that to build somebody, you clearly can't think of anything better. But this is how they started his run as Ryback. Every week on Raw, and almost every week on SmackDown, he's in these squash matches with these local jobbers, 2 or 3 of them at a time. And then they started upgrading him to actual established talent. He went against Kurt Hawkins and Tyler Rex a couple of times. And he squashed them too, even though they're so much better. But again, I really doubt anybody would miss Ryback if he just disappeared. Nobody would miss Hernandez or Jesse Goddard or Rob Terry in TNA. So, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this rant. This episode of the Wrestling Rant. A lot of big hosses that need to go bye-bye. They cut some of the worst promos, and they put on some of the worst match. And what's even worse is when you have two of them feuding. Like, here recently at WrestleMania, they had Mark Henry and Ryback. Neither one of these guys can talk. How are you supposed to sell the feud? How are you supposed to build it up? They can't cut promos. All you can do is have, like, in-ring segments, and that's basically what they did. They were, like, trying to one-up each other. Like, anything you can do, I can do better. One of them would squash some jobber, and then the other one would come down and pick the guy up, the jobber guy, and then slam the hell out of him. You know, Ryback would hit the shell shock, and then Mark Henry would pick him up and hit the world's strongest slam on him. Just really weak storytelling. They can't cut promos because neither one of them can cut promos. And even a while back, they had Big Show and Mark Henry in a feud. I'm not sure which one was worse, that or Mark Henry and Ryback. I just really don't understand what Vince has. He has this huge boner for these big, huge guys. He must still think it's the 80s, where these big, huge guys and their muscular physiques would be popular. That's not the case anymore, Vince. The audience has changed. People want wrestlers with talent, with charisma, people who can cut promos. And I've already went over this before, so I feel like I'm just going round and around. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Wrestling Rant. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure some of you may agree with me, at least in part, about some of these people. But that's going to do it for this episode. Tomorrow is Friday, and I will see if I can watch SmackDown. And I will see if it's as good as Raw was on Monday. We'll have to see. But again, that's going to do it for this episode of the Wrestling Rant. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.